Real quick.
Geno Smith, actually good. I would like to trade a mid-second if that's at all possible, but I don't know if it is anymore.
I was just going to say, I want to quickly talk about Geno because we haven't talked about him yet. I don't think on any of the shows. Geno Smith has been playing completely out of his mind. The dude is only a backup running back for the last, 10 years because he got punched in the face.
Running back, that is incredible.
Or a backup quarterback for
he's playing so well quarterback.
Like not showing up.
Maybe A.J. Dillon should move to quarterback.
Got punched out for it. Now we get to experience this glory finally. He was written off, but he didn't write back. And
I love that.
That was a great line. And then he followed it up later with something like, "Are you surprised that I'm awesome?" And I thought that was a little bit kind of ruining the storyline. Like, Geno,
it was a bad faith argument. Loser. Yeah, it was a surprise. It was a bad faith argument on Geno's part.
Geno, you were a lovable loser, and then you just like ruined it. Like, why would you do that? We were all cheering for you, and now we're like, you're kind of a douche. I don't really like you that much anymore. So you're buying for mid-second.
Yeah, and I don't even know if that's possible. I would also look at like just quarterback swaps. Like, I'm kind of curious, like where people valued. So what I posted, I'm going to try and find it here. What I posted about him in the Discord. So what I posted in the Discord, I said, Geno seems ellipses good. I said, maybe the window has already passed in several leagues, but I think if it hasn't, and if Geno is legit, this is probably the end of window where you're going to be able to get him for less than the Bulletproof window, which for those who don't know, I usually refer to the Bulletproof window as being ending in the early second, and that's usually the latest that we can get a round 2 Bulletproof type wide receiver, with the exception of special cases like a Wandale or a Hamler, where the market is like, no, you're not actually good. The reality is, outside of legit quarterbacks, there is not that much job security. Baker, Wentz, Matt Ryan, good recent examples of seemingly entrenched options who went from high-value players to desperation rentals in a pretty short period of time. Geno Smith, admittedly playing out his mind right now, and as long as he plays okay the rest of the way, the sample is probably good enough that he could get a Case Keenum-esque trial run as a modal outcome. Maybe he keeps playing this well and he gets a Tannehill deal. I definitely don't think it's overly likely he's a long-term starting quarterback, but if I could use the anchoring effect on a Wentz or a Jameis Winston, where people had more faith in them as a long-term option coming into the year and sell them for Geno Smith straight up, I would do that because I think that you have less data on Geno at any time recently, and the only data that we do have is that he's really good. And so I think it's more plausible that he's really good than the other quarterbacks who have been bad over like a fairly prolonged sample are actually good, or that they're going to stick in the league long enough where you care about losing the deal. And honestly, like mid to late second, that's where we take quarterbacks like Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. Like, we're already talking about quarterbacks that are kind of long shots at the time. Now, Geno doesn't probably have that same value upside because he's not a rookie, but he's already shown that he's like a really good quarterback in the NFL for a month. So that counts for something to me. And yeah, I would say that if you can get him for like mid-second value, I'm certainly trying. And I would always try like to do that like for players, right? What if, I mean, the thing with Geno is he was on waivers. Some team might have him as like their 4th quarterback, might have no need for him, but they might only have like 4 startable wide receivers because one's hurt or something. And you could go to them and be like, hey, like, I don't know, who's an example of like a wide receiver that doesn't matter that much that we could trade for Geno Smith right now? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I kept wanting to say Tyler Lockett, but actually probably wouldn't want to move Tyler Lockett right now. Wide receiver one. Maybe? Curtis Samuel. I'd love to trade Curtis Samuel for Geno Smith. It's a great one. I don't think Robert Woods is worth enough, but like I would definitely move Robert Woods.
For sure. Adam Thielen. If I can move Adam Thielen for Geno.
Oh yeah, Adam Thielen. That's a good one. Okay, what about is Brandon Cooks a bridge too far? I think it's
I'd rather have Brandon Cooks, I think.
Okay, I think I'd rather have Brandon Cooks too. What about Wandale Robinson?
Yeah, if I needed a quarterback on my like competing team, I'd probably be into that trade.
That's an interesting one.
I would prefer not to trade Wandale Robinson, who's probably pretty good. But if that was the only way I could get myself a starting quarterback, that would be a sufficient trade, I think. I think the thing with Geno right now, he's running super hot. Like if you look at his on Player Profiler, you probably never heard of the website. It's playerprofiler.com. And they have this expected fantasy points metric. Geno Smith rates number 25 in expected fantasy points. Yet he is number 7 in actual fantasy points. So he's playing like super well.
But those two are like correlated a little bit at quarterback position, because like if you're producing a lot of fantasy points over expectation, it precludes you from generating more expected fantasy points. Like we talked about, the opposite of this with Joe Mixon, where he's like getting stuff to the goal line so many times that it gives him more goal line carries. Like if Geno Smith has one 70-yard pass to DK Metcalf from his own 30-yard line, then he's getting a bunch of fantasy points over expected, and it also precludes him from racking up any fantasy points on the rest of that drive. Because like if they're saying that like that first pass was like, I don't know, 7 fantasy points over expected, whatever that expected was now all he gets on that drive. Whereas if DK Metcalf catches it, then it's thrown a little behind him and he gets tackled at the 50-yard line, now he has 50 yards more on the drive to rack up expected fantasy points.
Yeah, I think like for sure there is a compounding factor there.
Right. But I'm not saying he's not running hot. He is very much running hot. I'm just saying
he's also like number 2 in accuracy rating, number 1 in his true completion percentage, number 5 in deep ball completion. Like all these things that I don't overly value a whole lot when we're doing analysis, he's like smashing in. And that just means that he's probably playing a little bit beyond what he should be playing, considering he's not, Drew Brees. like right. Geno Smith.
But what about stuff that you do value though? Like what about his PFF passing grade? Do you care about that? You usually care about that.
Yeah, I don't think he was overly great in that, was he?
He is PFF's number 1 rated quarterback by a lot.
For the season?
Yes. His PFF passing grade this season is 87.9. Next closest is Patrick Mahomes at 82.2.
All right. Well, then I take that back.
So yeah, it's like, to cap between Geno,
he's only 3 spots ahead of Andy Dalton.
7 points. That's a wider gap than Mahomes to Tom Brady at 7. Also, it's hilarious. Like if you look at it, it's fucking Geno, then Mahomes, then Hurts, then Andy Dalton, then Josh Allen.
Yeah, so like Andy Dalton, rotates. Perhaps a buy low we're not considering. Bailey Zapp over here at quarterback 9 right now. Like, let's go.
Okay, actually, here's an interesting trade idea. Jared Goff has had this like awesome start to the year, right? But mostly against bad defenses, and then he had a really bad game against a good defense. What do you think you get added on top of Geno with Jared Goff? Because they might be kind of the exact same bet.
Honestly, I might take Geno ahead of Goff. Straight up.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what. You can do that. I'm sure you can get that done.
I don't know. Let's see. Geno Smith is valued at 24.41. Keep trade cut points. Jared Goff is valued at 36.38. I feel like you might have to do that. Like, I don't know. People are irrational with Goff.
Okay. So what if you go Goff plus 3 for Geno plus 2? That seems great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw Jared Goff being traded for first round picks last week. Like, yeah, he had an outlier, amazing week with no weapons. I get it. It was awesome. Good for Jared Goff. Like, winning on and off the field. Love that dude. And then it's like, no, he's not that good though. Like he's Andy Dalton at best. Like he is fine, but he's not gonna win you fantasy. He doesn't rush at all, and he's probably not an excellent NFL quarterback, or we would have seen him be an excellent NFL quarterback in probably one of the best situations that you could ask a quarterback to be in Los Angeles the last few years that he was there. And I just like Jared Goff isn't all that exciting. So if you can get Jared Goff, or if you have Jared Goff, you can get Geno Smith and a little extra on top, like a 2-for-3 swap. That would be an amazing trade, in my opinion.
I want to talk to you about 2 other stats that you've cared about at least a little bit in the past. I would like you to guess who currently leads the NFL in completion percentage above expected.
Well, is it Geno? I feel like he was really high.
Geno. It is Geno, and not only is it Geno, but what do you think is the gap in percentage points between Geno Smith and second place in completion percentage above expected?
I'm pretty sure it was a lot, because I remember reading about Russell Wilson, and Geno basically took Russell Wilson's spot, and Russell Wilson is now terrible.
The gap is 6.7 percentage points. It is massive. So the second highest is Tua Tagovailoa at 3.8. And then after him, it's like Mahomes 3.3, Josh Allen 2.7, like a bunch of guys kind of between like 2 to 3, and Geno's at 10.5. Which, like, first of all, it's like to some extent that's signal of him being good, but to a larger extent, that signal that like this is obviously unsustainable. His EPA per play right now is 4th. He's behind Allen, Mahomes, and Tua. So
EPA plus CPOE, he's 3rd, which is pretty damn good.
Behind Allen and Mahomes. So
yeah.
So which like I will say this, like
Geno into my dynasty rankings from now on.
There's like something to be said like about the company that you're in proving the validity of the stat, and like it's Josh like so the EPA plus CPOE composite, right? So we're talking about the smell test. One way that I would look at the smell test is like, do the guys that we think should be at the top, are they at the top? Well, Allen's 1st, Mahomes is 2nd, Hurts is 5th. Well, I guess whatever. He probably wasn't expected. But Allen 1st, Mahomes is 2nd, Lamar is 6th, Herbert is 7th. So that's like all the guys we think are the best quarterbacks in the league. And then sandwiched between them are Geno, which is hilarious. Tua, small sample, but a guy that we wanted to see growth from, and Jalen Hurts, who similar guy we wanted to see growth from. So it's definitely something.
Yeah, no, I think I'm into buying Geno at his cost. He's currently valued around a late 2nd. I'd probably go a little higher than that if I needed a quarterback. I'm probably not going to get him unless I need a quarterback though. Like I don't feel like this is like a
It's not a universal trade offer spam.
Yeah, I'm not like I don't want to miss out on the Geno Smith experience, but I'm also like, hey, if I need a cheap quarterback, this is probably the guy I'm going to get. There's nobody else I'm really all that interested in.
How about this? Here's my stance. Late 2nd or late 2nd value, I would do universally in every single league that I can do it. I don't know how often you can do it. What I will try in like literally every league is if I have like a short-term running back option. So let's say James Conner is out this week. I have Eno Benjamin on like 30% of my dynasty rosters. I will look at the Geno manager, and on the off chance that they haven't seen a running back that week, I will offer Eno Benjamin and a 3rd to Geno Smith in every league that I have Eno Benjamin if James Conner's out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then so like that kind of like buy low where it's like riskless. And then if I need a quarterback, then I'll do the other stuff we're talking about for sure. Also, really quick, now that I'm just having fun on this site, if you want to know how good Deebo Samuel's catch and run was, all you need to look at is the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo is 4th in the NFL in EPA per play, right? So that means on plays that involve him throwing a pass or dropping back, actually, he creates more expected points than all but 3 other quarterbacks. But in percentage, yes. But in completion percentage over expected, he is 3rd worst. He is only ahead of Justin Fields and Baker Mayfield. So basically, he is completing very few of the passes he's supposed to complete. But when he does complete them, occasionally Deebo Samuel takes them for 50 yards at a touchdown more than he should.
It's beautiful. Like really another quick tangent on Deebo Samuel. I've been dunked on a couple times for Deebo Samuel thus far, which is kind of funny because I had said he was going to be a wide receiver 2 and probably not the contention for wide receiver 1 overall. And he's currently sitting at wide receiver 20, and people are dunking on me like he's awesome. And I'm like, no, this is what I said. I should be dunking on you. I told you he was a wide receiver 2 being drafted as a high-end wide receiver 1. Get out of here. It's ridiculous.
I think he's going to end up as a low-end wide receiver 1. His usage has been really good. It's weird. He kind of like had the one spike play against the Rams, but otherwise, he's like honestly like almost underperformed his usage, which is weird for Deebo Samuel. I think this last week he had like 2 catches on 8 targets or something crazy, which is
219.
Not very Deebo Samuel.
Week 1 it was 218, but that was in the monsoon, yeah.
Right.
So you can't really fault him for that. And then like he's been pretty good. He's just not been like he's not been what his ADP suggested he was going to be. That's all I'm saying. And he's right around where I thought his ADP should have been. So W for bean counter and L for the masses, even though they're dunking on me because he makes amazing plays. I get that he makes amazing plays. He just doesn't have as many opportunities to make amazing plays as he should have at his ADP. Anyway.
Yeah, what's a bummer is like I think it has to get better in San Fran because Jimmy, I think Jimmy totally sucks for sure, but eventually they're going to be in some games where the other team scores points. Maybe not. Maybe San Francisco's defense is like the 85 Bears, but I think eventually they're going to be in a game where the other team scores points, and that has not happened yet in the Jimmy G era because like Debo is not really scoring that many fantasy points. Kittle is not like appearing in games, and then Brandon Ayuk is also doing nothing. So I will say that I did not expect that once Jimmy, I thought this was like the tail end bad outcome for a Lance-led offense. Once it went to Jimmy, I was like, that really sucks for Trey Lance, but like I feel like this secures the floor of the weapons. It has not happened yet. I don't really know who it's going to happen for, but I will just say I'm like pretty open-minded to buying some of the 49ers because I would be pretty stunned if like for the entire year they just support like Debo as a below-end wide receiver 2, and then Ayuk is a nothing and Kittle is a nothing. Like I think it's going to get better. It's still a consolidated passing offense, and they're not going to be able to sit on 20-point leads every single week. Although this week they will. They play Atlanta. They will beat them by a lot.
Did you this is hilarious. Did you know that Jimmy Garoppolo back in 2018 was like quarterback 6 in Dynasty after playing like 7 games in San Francisco? Did you know that?
No,
one of my favorite things of all time.
I didn't play Dynasty. That's hilarious.
Oh, it was a thing of beauty. Jimmy Garoppolo had like what was it? He
won every game he played.
They won every game. It was a total QB win situation, and he had, I think it was 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in those games. Yeah. But they won. And people were like, dude, Jimmy's amazing. He's so good. And I was like fighting people constantly on social media at the time about how he might need to look at more than these 5 games. He went 5-0 in his games that year. He had a 67.5% completion percentage, 1,560 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Like 7 touchdowns is a 3.9% touchdown rate. That isn't even freaking good. That's like Carolina Panthers bad. And people were over there, like to the moon with Jimmy Garoppolo at that point. It was completely ridiculous. I've never had so much fun in my life. And yeah, anyway, so he got hurt. I think it was the next year. And
he got hurt. Nick Mullins.
Nick Mullins played.
And then CJ Beathard.
Rookie season. And people are like, Jimmy's coming back. Like Dante Pettis is going to be so good as a sophomore. And it's like, actually, this may come as a shock to you, but Nick Mullins was better than Jimmy Garoppolo's ever been in his entire life. So penciling this in as a quarterback upgrade is probably the wrong move, and it was absolutely true and hilarious. And I just like to bring up the Jimmy Garoppolo like erroneous ADP every chance I can get because it was like so bad. It was the worst ADP I've ever seen of any player in all of Dynasty. Like that's how bad it was.
I can't believe that happened.
Worst.
That's pretty stunning to me. So I've never experienced anything like that. I didn't play the Dynasty at the time. I will, though, however, say, like, as much as I'm laughing at this, the guy who I drafted way too high that year, that like blew up in my face, I just like didn't really know nearly enough about prospecting in like a good way. I was like so in on Marquise Goodwin that year, because he had like that really hot run with Jimmy at the end of the year, and then I was like, all right. That's Jimmy's guy. It's Marquise Goodwin. Like he's really fast. He's a sprinter. They finally got him to the right role. He's going to get fed all these targets. He's like the Shanahan guy now. He was not the guy, let me tell you. But I remember drafting Marquise Goodwin. Like I don't know when it was, probably round 6 or 7, not like round 2. But like I just decided to penalize myself a draft pick that year. Basically, that's what I did by spending one on Marquise Goodwin. But there's been so many 49ers, like, ridiculousness where we had, the Jerick McKinnon year, like, to be clear, that's, like, an incomplete. Like, he never even got to play towards ACL. But, like, that was a guy that had, like, a ton of value that then just, like, evaporated into nothing. Brandon Ayuk, doghouse last year. We had the Trey Sermon evaluated into nothing. We had the Joe Williams, the table pound.
Found the table. Found the table for
Joe Williams. Yeah, 49ers, Dante
Pettis. Dante Pettis was from Film Grinders, wide receiver 1 in the 2018 draft. It was ridiculous. There was DJ Moore and Cortland Sutton and Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, and some Film Grinders in particular had Dante Pettis posted up at wide receiver. Like, you couldn't get that wide receiver 1 wrong. for like years. Like all those guys were like very relevant for like 2 or 3 years after the draft. And then some people actually had Dante Pettis, who was like out of the league by his second year. Unbelievable. What a time to be alive. Like I'm so sad that you missed out on the Dante Pettis era and the Nick Mullins era.
You know what era I'm really sad?
Quarterback 5 or 6 or 4 or something ridiculous in dynasty leagues.
You know what era I'm really sad that I missed out on? I actually didn't like miss out on this era as a player, but I missed out on it as a like Twitter person. Like I wasn't on Dynasty Twitter at the time, and then I like heard about these takes that existed shortly after, and I like lost my mind. Was the 2019 draft seems like it was the best possible time to be on Dynasty Twitter because of all the Hakeem Butler wide receiver 1 takes, and then he goes like round 4, and the Kelvin Harmon takes, and the Riley Ridley takes, and the DeMarcus Lodge takes. And like then obviously at the other end of the spectrum, like then you have like N'Keal Harry, where it's like it looks like the analytics boys got their win because it's like lol Hakeem Butler, N'Keal Harry went round 1. Where's your king now? And it turns out like that he's also not a king. He's actually terrible. And then like it's only like wide receivers named Brown and DK and Debo. Like just everyone lost in the 2019 draft. I feel like I don't think there was a winner in the 2019 draft. I mean, I was a winner because I had AJ Brown as my wide receiver 1, but nobody else was a winner.
So I had AJ Brown as my wide receiver 2. So like, give me a break. But the 2019 draft was actually pretty wild because it was like you said, like all these like film guy love fest just flamed out. All the guys that nobody really liked.
Went day 3. Hakeem, Harmon, Lodge, and Ridley. It's like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
But here's the weird thing is it was also a glorious time to be a film analyst because a lot of the players that we didn't like as data analysts ended up awesome. Like we got Deebo Samuel, who basically did nothing in college, being awesome. We got DK Metcalf. We got Deontay Johnson. Like we got all these like.
Well, I think DK Metcalf and Deontay Johnson had totally fine profiles.
No, they didn't have totally fine. Get out of here. No, absolutely not. Worked out really well. Great for them, but they didn't have totally fine profiles. DK Metcalf was like pretty awful. Awful.
That's I think another story for another podcast. Although I'll give them Terry McLaurin. Although I won't anymore. We awarded a win too early on Terry McLaurin. We never should have accepted the L on Terry McLaurin. He's not actually that good. He's a fake alpha.
Is he fake alpha? Yeah, I just looked it up. Jimmy GQ was quarterback 5 in like June of 2018. Like quarterback 5, like in the world.
Like I didn't play Dynasty at the time, and I'll be honest that like whatever my approach would have been to Dynasty at the time, it would have been bad for sure. It would have been bad because like when I started playing Dynasty, I played like a total moron. All that being said, not a fucking chance in hell that even the dumbest version of me would have had Jimmy Garoppolo at Dynasty quarterback 5. There's just no world in which I would have done that.
I honestly feel like this was a lot easier like 3 or 4 years ago because people were really bad at Dynasty. Like I feel like the community sharpened up quite a lot in the last few years.
Oh, for sure, sharpened up.
Like, Gabriel Davis is like the most erroneous player, and he's not even that bad. Like he's pretty bad, but he's not Jimmy GQ at 5 overall at quarterback bad.
The edge isn't gone, but like I think the edge really has to change. Like I think that like the edge that you can get by simply picking good rookies and fading bad rookies has decreased significantly.
For sure. For
like a couple reasons. Number one, every single good player goes to Ohio State and Alabama, which just makes them really hard to scout through data. Number 2 is like, I mean, like Henry Ruggs like went in the first round of every draft in 2020, but then like Kadarius Toney was like going in like the late 2. So it's like, what do you actually get out of thinking that Kadarius Toney is like bad in terms of a round 1 rookie? Because not much, because the entire market has like said that he's by far the worst of these round 1 rookies. So like you also thinking it doesn't like accomplish anything, right? It was kind of like similar to this year where it's like David Bell goes round 3 and his like ADP is higher than Alec Pierce, who goes round 2. So it's like whatever edge we would have had, like potentially, I mean, for what it's worth, Alec Pierce is way better than David Bell, but like assume that like that's a theoretical edge that we would have had, that like being like, oh, like this guy's actually pretty undervalued, this guy's overvalued. It's like that's like so baked in that like I don't think that you can't generate value in rookie drafts. I think you definitely can, but the extent to which that you can, I definitely think has reduced. Or like the extent to which you can just based off of avoiding bust profiles is reduced, because a lot of like Christian Watson, if this was 2 years ago, Christian Watson and Sky Moore would have had the identical ADP, right? Christian Watson would have actually gone ahead of him for sure, because he's like big and fast. Like Christian Watson would have been like the 104.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Christian Watson would have been way higher than he was now, because big and fast, and also tethered to Aaron Rodgers.
Right. Tethered to Aaron Rodgers, no target competition, big and fast. He would have been 104. And instead he was like regularly falling to round 2, because everyone's like, oh, his receiving yards market share is pretty unimpressive.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I think where the biggest advantage comes now with like rookie drafts is we're still pretty good at identifying the absolute duds. Like those guys are generally still pretty bad.
James Cook still went in like the first round, and that was obviously ridiculous.
James Cook going in the first round was a huge mistake and was obvious to data analysts. But I think where the biggest advantage comes from, like the bulletproof process, it isn't so much from like who's good and who's bad. Like that's part of it for sure, but it's where can you move around the draft board to just soak up the value of who's good and who's bad.
For sure.
Like that's what I've been saying for the last 2 or 3 years now. It's like, yeah, okay, we like Jonathan Taylor a lot. Like there was no question. Jonathan Taylor was a great rookie. And if he was going at 105, we would have been smash picking him. But he was going at 102. But it wasn't so much he was going at 102. It was that he was going at like pick 16 in Dynasty before playing a snap. Like that was the crazy part. And I was like, oh, well, you could actually get DeAndre Swift and Cam Akers for like 3 rounds later. And you could put a T. Higgins or Justin Jefferson on top. And when you do that, it's a pretty great move to trade back. I think that's where a lot of our edge comes from now, is like identifying where you're really getting the high quality players and shifting your value from like the super high valued to the non super high valued. And then also like Clyde Edwards-Helaire going like 101 was insane and never should have happened. But that's another like pivot where you get your value. Like you're like, well, hold on a second. This player isn't actually good, and you only like him because he plays with Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid has a history of having good running backs. That doesn't mean that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a good running back. That means his running backs in the past were actually good. So now we're just going to pivot back, pick up DeAndre Swift, pick up T. Higgins, and call it a day, and let the cards fall where they may. I think that's where a lot of the edge comes from now, is like maneuvering around draft boards, and like we've been doing it for 2 or 3 years now. But I feel like that's something that the masses haven't really caught on to yet, is where they're like, they're really in a binary state of this player is good or bad. And that's gotten way better. Like you said, Christian Watson would have been way higher if this was 2019. Like he'd have been right there with DK Metcalf as like wide receiver.
We would have been saying like the conversation would have been had is like, it would have been like, here's why Drake London is a better pick than Christian Watson. And people on Twitter were like, why? They're both pretty big. Christian Watson ran faster. He's got Aaron Rodgers. He's Marcus Mariota. Like that would have been like the level of analysis we would have been doing, right? Like so, like we would have been able to like, right, 100. We would have easily been able to like get Chris Olave like the 110 by virtue of not drafting Christian Watson, right? Like that's anyway. But unfortunate that's no longer the case. I agree. There's still a lot of edges. We're now at 2 hours. Sorry, Matt. Let's get out of here, please.
I'm so sorry, Matt. But anyway, this is Bulletproof, Sweat and Bullets, a Bulletproof Fantasy Football podcast, something like that. I can't remember. It's really late, and I've had a lot of wine. So we're out of here. See you next week.